Hello, welcome to Giant Industries. We're going to review how to take the plungers out, how to change the plunger packing kits, how to change the valve assemblies, and how to change the oil seals. First thing we need to do is remove the manifold and the seal case. You're going to take a 8mm Allen socket and you're going to break loose these cap screws on the front. Once you got your 8 cap screws removed, go ahead and grab a rubber mallet. You can tap the manifold off. And then you can go ahead and tap your seal case off. Set those off to the side. Remove your oil dipstick. You should always drain the oil before getting into this too. Remove the key out of your shaft. I'm going to remove my bearing covers. So that's a 13mm socket. So on the bearing covers, there's a little slot on each side that you would take 2 flathead screwdrivers. Kind of jimmy the bearing cover out and then slide it completely out. Reverse the pump to the opposite side. Same process over here. You take out your 4 bolts. This bearing cover as well has the 2 screwdriver slots. Pop that second bearing cover out. Now I'm going to take the crankcase cover off the back. That's a 6mm Allen. Now this pump's a brand new pump, so the crankcase cover comes off pretty easily. If it doesn't come off quite that easy, you can tap that as well with your rubber mallet. Okay, we got the back crankcase cover off, we got our side bearing covers off. Now we need to remove the conrod covers. That is a 10mm socket. Now, as you can see, there's a threaded hole in the middle of the conrod cap. You can take one of your bolts, screw it into that threaded hole. You can either try and wiggle it out, or you can continue to screw the bolt in, and it will separate the conrod cap from the conrod. Now, up on top here, you can see there's a number 3. These are in sets. So this 3 matches, there's a 3 I'll show you in a little bit on the top here, and these sets need to stay together. This one here is number 2. And this one's number 1. So now that you got your caps off, we're going to go ahead and reach into the gear end, and we're going to push forward the plungers and the remaining end of the conrod, and we're going to grab our shaft and we're going to work its way out. Shaft out. So when you pull your shaft, you want to look and make sure there's no excessive wearing, any scoring, any deep lines that you can feel when you run your fingernail over them. The shaft's brand new, so it looks pretty good. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to reach in and we're going to grab our plunger and conrods. So this one's marked number 3. So I'm going to make sure that I set it up with my number 3 cap. This next one's labeled number 2. Put that with the number 2 cap. And this last one's labeled number 1. So I'm going to put that with the number 1 cap. I can flip it up top, and now we can replace the oil seals. So your oil seals are here. You're going to need a flathead screwdriver. You're going to take it just underneath the lip and you're going to pry up. And it should pop right out. So this is a brand new oil seal because it's a brand new pump, so I'm going to put it right back in. To install it, you kind of just work it in to start. Grab a 24mm socket. And tap it down into place. And that's how you would replace your oil seals. Now your plungers on these are one piece. So in order to replace the plunger, you have to disconnect it from the conrod. So that pin can be punched out in either direction, and the two just come apart like that. It's the same for putting them back together. That's how you would install your new plunger assembly. So that's replacing your plunger assemblies and your oil seals. Now we can put the back end back together. making sure that I'm putting the two conrod, the cap and the conrod back together with the correct numbers. I want to put it with the number in the up position. So I have the number 3. I want to make sure it's going in the up position. Going to slide it back into the crankcase. I'm going to push it through the oil seal so it sits in the back. I grab the number 2, make sure it's in the up position. Slide it in and push it through the oil seal. Grab the number 1 and make sure the 1 is in the up position. And push that through the oil seal. Then I'm going to grab my shaft and weave my shaft back through the gearbox. Until it's seated in there. I'm going to grab my bearing cover. I have a gasket on my bearing cover. I'm going to make sure that's seated properly so that my bolt holes align. Make sure it's still in good shape. I'm going to reinstall my bearing cover. My gasket kind of came a little bit crooked there, so I'm going to use a screwdriver to realign it. And I'm going to put my 4 bolts back in. I grab my 13mm socket again. I'm going to snug these bolts up. I'm not going to put a lot of torque on them yet. I'm going to work them back and forth between 2 so that the bearing cover goes in evenly. You always want to make sure when you put your bearing cover back in that your screwdriver slots are on the side. I'm going till the bolts are just snug. Turn the crankcase, then I'm going to grab my other bearing cover, make sure my gasket's aligned. I'm going to reinstall that. Put my 4 bolts back in. My screwdriver slots are to the side. I'm going to work this one back and forth too, so that it installs evenly. And I'm going to go just till the screws are snug. Both bearing caps covers are back in. I'm going to go back to the back end of my crankcase. Now I'm going to take my conrod covers. I'm going to place the back end onto the shaft. I'm going to make sure my 3 is in the up position. And I'm going to reinstall my covers. Getting both bolts started loosely. And then just lightly snugging them up. I grab my second conrod cover, making sure that the 2 is in the up position. Gonna reach into there. Forward. And install both bolts. Finally, I'm going to grab the number 1, make sure it's in the up position. Going to reach into my crankcase and make sure that I can access the other end of the conrod. And get my 2 bolts started. I'm going to snug both up. I'm going to grab a rag and I'm just going to rotate the shaft to make sure everything spins like it's supposed to. And then I'm going to go back in. I'm going to completely snug them up. Now if you refer to your manual, those bolts should be torqued 8 inch-pounds. Just grab a torque wrench, set it to 98. Just until it clicks. Once you have all 6 torqued, you want to rotate your shaft to make sure everything still spins smoothly. So then you're done installing your plunger assemblies and conrods back into the crankcase. Now we have to torque our bearing cover bolts. Those should be torqued to 132 inch-pounds. So I'm going to grab the torque wrench again. Set that to 132. And do the same for the opposite side. So I'm going to set the crankcase up there. So that takes care of your plungers and your oil seals. Now we're going to pull your seal case back into here, and we're going to replace the packing kit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the 2 spacer rings. They're only on the outside 2. I'm going to grab a screwdriver. Then in the bottom there's a seal. So I'm going to pull the first seal out. And if you zoom down into there, you have your pressure ring. You can use a screwdriver to pry that up and out. Just working it around. Then you have your pressure ring. Then you have your pressure ring. You're going to go ahead and grab a new pressure ring. Grab a petroleum-based grease. Grease it up and slide it back down into the seal case. Then you're going to do the same thing with your new oil or your new seal. Grease it up. And press it down into your seal case. Now if it goes in a little tight, you're not able to seat it properly or all the way down, you can grab a 16mm socket and tap it into place. So I'm going to flip the seal case over. I'm going to take 2 flathead screwdrivers. There's a groove underneath here, and I'm going to work my way around and pry this apart. So on this item I have a seal, which that can be taken out the same way as the opposite side. It's the same seal. Just pry it out. And then you have an O-ring on this end. You can either grab a pick or screwdriver. If your nails are long enough. And pull that O-ring off. So now it's empty. Then you would take a new O-ring, grease it up a little, slide it back into that groove, take a new seal, grease it up, and pop that back into place. And then we can reinstall this into the seal case. You can flip her over. Then we can reinstall our spacer rings on the 2 outside. And that takes care of changing the seals out on your seal case. So next I'm going to pull the manifold back over. I'm going to grab a flathead screwdriver and I'm going to pop this out. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take out the valves. So this is your inlet valve down there. Grab a pair of needle nose pliers. Going to reach down into there, pull your plastic valve cage out. Reach down into there, grab your spring, grab your valve plate. Now my valve seat's still in there. I need to use a blind hole puller to be able to get that out. So I grab my blind hole puller. and you pop your valve seat out. So then you want to take your valve seat and your valve plate. You want to look for any unusual wear or pitting on them. These are brand new, so they look pretty good. So I'm going to reinstall this right back into there. I'm going to set my valve plate right on top of my valve seat. Put the green spring back, and then take my plastic cage and push it all together. It snaps into place. Grab a little bit more grease. You can reach into there and make sure your valve plate moves up and down. And then you can seat your valve. And then you can hear it seat. And you can reinstall. That's how you do your inlet valve. Now, in order to do your discharge valve, you need to remove your plugs. Now, sometimes when these are all corroded together and you can't get them off, you have to tap your valve plug with a ball peen hammer. So you just give it a tap, and that should help break it loose. You never want to use an impact to take these apart. So I have my plug removed. If you look down there, you can see your valve. It's the same valve as what's on the inlet. So grab your needle nose pliers. Remove your plastic cage. Remove your spring. And then remove your valve plate. Grab your blind hole puller again. And it popped right out on me. Once again, you want to examine your valve seat and your valve plate for any wear or any pitting. These are brand new, so they look pretty good. I'm going to reassemble the valve assembly. Make sure the valve plate moves. Grease up my O-ring. And push the valve back in until you hear and feel its seat. Now this valve plug and the manifold are stainless, so it's stainless going into stainless, so you always want to make sure that you use an anti-seize. Down, and then you secure this in a vise. So you would take a torque wrench and your 32mm socket, and you would torque that to 110 foot-pounds. Okay, so that takes care of valves, that takes care of plunger packing, takes care of plungers, and takes care of oil seals. So now we want to reassemble the head of the pump back onto the gear end. So I'm going to pull my crankcase forward. I'm going to grab my seal case. I'm going to rotate my plungers until the outer two plungers are sticking up to help me locate when I put my seal case back on. When I put the seal case back on, I want to make sure these 3 holes are pointed towards the bottom. If they're not quite there, you can use a screwdriver and turn them into place. So they should be facing the bottom of the pump. I'm going to go ahead and put my seal case on. You can use a hammer to tap it into place. Make sure your spacer rings are still seated properly. Go ahead and grab your manifold. Then you set that in place as well. You can kind of hear it seat down. If you have a little bit of trouble, you can lightly tap on it until everything seats. Then you can grab your 8 cap screws and get them all the way restarted. Grab your 8mm Allen head. And start to snug your bolts up. Once they're all snugged, I'm going to lay the pump back down. And I'm going to grab my torque wrench. And I have to torque these cap screws to 29.5 foot-pounds. So I'm going to grab my torque wrench, set it to 29.5 foot-pounds. I'm going to start on the 4 inside cap screws. And then work my way to the 4 outside cap screws. Once you have all 8 complete, you want to just go over and make sure they're all still torqued. So now your manifold and seal case are reassembled to the pump. I'm going to turn the pump around. I'm going to reinstall my crankcase cover. This is your 6mm Allen. Now these cap screws need to be torqued to 110 inch-pounds. So I'm going to grab my torque wrench again. And I'm going to set it to 110 inch-pounds. So now that my case cover's on, I'm going to go ahead and grab my key for my shaft. Reinstall that. At this point you want to put oil into your pump. Put it to the correct level on the dipstick. reinstall your oil cap and dipstick. And then you'd want to test your pump.